We're here together with Honourable Professor Peter Katjavivi, Speaker of the National Assembly of Namibia. I'm the Dean of International for Africa of Cardiff University, and we're here together on the occasion of Professor Katjavivi's award of an Honorary Fellowship by Cardiff University under our Civic Mission partnership with the University of Namibia, to congratulate Professor Katjavivi on the award of his fellowship and to say a little bit about his life, his work and his contribution. Welcome, Professor Katjavivi, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me here. I'm extremely delighted to have the opportunity to join here on this occasion, an occasion that led me being honored by the University of Cardiff. I'm extremely grateful. It is such a wonderful acknowledgement about one's life and contribution to our common humanity. I hail from a generation of Namibian young men and women who were born in the 1940s. This was at the time when the call for self-rule, for freedom, was being expressed forcefully in Africa and elsewhere. This was something that obviously influenced me as I grew up in Namibia, a country that was then regarded as a fifth province of South Africa. What happened to the people of South Africa under the South African colonial regime affected us in Namibia as well. So the cry for freedom, self-determination was very profound. It influenced many of us as we were growing up in the country. So those are some of the things that influenced us. But I think it was after the Second World War, with the return of a number of African soldiers who fought in the colonial armies in Africa and outside Africa, those men went back and started to relate their stories. Obviously, the war had impact on their lives. It shaped their life, made them to realize the fact that what they fought for, the sacrifices they made, was basically on behalf of the colonial governments, the empires of the time. And I always remember something that I read way back in history books relating to the Kenyan soldiers who were part of the British Army who fought in India, in Burma. And there was a particular story that attracted my attention that revealed these Indian soldiers met an Indian couple while in India, and the particular couple had family connections to Kenya, and they wanted to talk to these Kenyan soldiers. They said, "Why are you in the war? Why are you here?" And the Kenyan soldiers didn't have an answer to that. They thought, well, you know, we are here, we have to be here, we're told to be here. But the Indian couple then told them, I said, look, India is in this war, but after the war, we would like to have our India back. Now, these Kenyan soldiers, when they went back, that story, they carried that story back home. And these are the people who started the Mau Mau War in Kenya during the uprising. That had an impact on them. Basically say, if the Indians are going to have their India back, we in Kenya should have our Kenya back as well.
And what's very interesting about that anecdote, Prof, is that it tells us something about the history of ordinary people.
Yes.
And the development of their ideas, because it's very easy to focus. Yes. And actually I have some questions for you about the influence of the great thinkers about self-determination and self-rule. But what you remind us is that ordinary people also interacted, had these opportunities for mobility across the world because they were involved in the Second World War, and met each other in ways which would not otherwise have been possible, and developed their ideas that way.
The human contacts at the personal level, young people going to different parts of the world through education, the exposure, interacted with each other. And remember, the independence of India also had a tremendous impact on African leaders and brought people together to learn from each other, to understand each other. Prime Minister Nehru of India, the first Prime Minister of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, the links between the two of them led to both of these men networking with other fellow leaders, Abdul Nasser of Egypt, the Prime Minister, the first female Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, then Ceylon. All that led to the creation of the Nagaland movement, the third force, if you like, not aligned to the East or West, but creating a space for themselves that will obviously meet the needs and aspirations of the people of Africa, the people of Asia.
I suppose the question for me then is how we understand Namibian history in this context, because of course Namibia is a very young nation.
Yes.
So the period of time it took for Namibia to gain her independence was much longer. So in the background was this history of intellectual thought and positive action to bring about self-rule. But in Namibia's case, how were those years of waiting until so late in history for your own independence?
Yes. Well, I think this is something that is very interesting because it reminds me of the story of a Jamaican leader, Marcus Garvey, who was here in the United Kingdom as a young man, exposed to the whole story of self-determination, regaining one's background. And he then left. I'm told when he left here, he left with a partner, a young woman who came originally from Southern Africa, from the Lesotho. I'm not sure how accurate these stories are, but he went back to Jamaica, and then from Jamaica he moved to New York. And he was part of the Pan-African leaders who were talking about Africa's self-determination, telling black people who obviously were displaced during the slavery period, etc., and talk about the need for self-assertion, self-determination, and reclaiming black people's own dignity. Now, for some reason, I don't know how, he had a tremendous impact in terms of the message he was proclaiming. And in Namibia, in every small town, they had local grouping who were basically worshipping him, claiming that he will come back to liberate our part of Africa. And this sort of story were told from village to village, kept people's hope alive. And that, yes, we are under colonial domination, etc., but there will be a time when Marcus Garvey will come back and liberate us. But these are some of the stories that were obviously deliberately kept to keep the flame of freedom alive. And of course, I remember at school level how our teachers would teach us about history, and from time to time, the teacher would jump and close windows and said, look, close all those books. The books we are currently using do not tell the true story, the true history of our country. And that is what created the curiosity in the minds of young people like us to think about, there's something that we need to know about ourselves. And that basically have helped us to instill a sense of belonging, a sense of hope, and the fact that we're equally human beings and we can reclaim what belongs to us.
And as a young man, those ideas were influential on you, so you were aware of those ideas. For example, when you were on campus in the University of Dar es Salaam, similarly, you were a research assistant to Walter Rodney. So those ideas were influential on you as a young man?
Very much, very much. And of course, that also, the question of the desire for freedom, the call for self-determination was also expressed within the various churches in Namibia. The 1948 elections held in South Africa, that brought about the National Party to power, a party that was dedicated to discrimination against black people in South Africa and Namibia. They went on to win that election, and then they mobilized German-speaking people in Namibia. And the German, remember, we belong to the Lutheran Church. Namibia is predominantly a Christian country. But when the leader of the Lutheran Church, who happened to be German, was won over by the South African National Party to accept a seat in the South African Senate, that is what actually brought about division in the church. Black people decided to say, well, we thought we were all God's children, but the man who's the leader of our church openly going across to join a party that is basically dedicated to promoting a party system and everything, then we do not see ourselves belonging to the same church. There was a kind of an open split within the Lutheran Church, both in the central part of Namibia as well as in the south. But these are some of the manifestations that brought about the increase in political consciousness throughout the country, particularly in the 1950s, early 60s, and so forth. So the cry for freedom was reinforced by this kind of developments, making people to feel much more assertive and more determined to claim the whole question of freedom and self-determination for themselves. So the political movements were created, formed, that then helped to mobilize and led the political agenda for freedom.
And how would you relate that to your decision to go to Dar es Salaam to study on, we affectionately call it the Hill, and your years
Well,
there?
I think basically it started on a small scale at high school. The current president, Hage Keinkop, and many others, we belong to the same generation. We joined in a swap around the same time, basically realizing that having been reading literature that were provided, basically intellectually inclined, but providing a kind of a theoretical framework for the left-wing type of politics, saying freedom is in the hands of those who can fight for it. You have to have a vehicle that will carry you through political mobilization, and we have to organize. And we are our own liberators. No outside world can come to our aid without ourselves determining the actual agenda. And many of us decided to leave the country, of course illegally, without acquiring passport and things like that. In other words, marching across the Kalahari Desert into Botswana and eventually making our way all the way to Tanganyika. The first time when I saw the flag of an independent Africa was in 1962, having crossed from northern Rhodesia, now known as Zambia, and on our way by bus to Bear, and eventually through Iringa, Morogoro, all the way to Dar es Salaam. Arriving in Dar es Salaam, on the 18th December 1962. And that's, Dar es Salaam was our Mecca.
Yes.
If you are looking for freedom, if you are looking for a change, access to education, you have to make your way all the way to Dar es Salaam, where you'll be received and have an opportunity to sit for exams by some of the scholarship agencies who were able to help us to locate us various places, either in Dar es Salaam or elsewhere. That is how we managed to make it, eventually.
How was that organized, Prof? So were you received?
Well,
was there a structure around that? Because that was always my impression with UDSM history or Dar es Salaam history, was that the university was organized to receive colleagues from all over the continent.
Absolutely. The government of then Tanganyika eventually transformed to Tanzania. I don't know how they managed to do it, but they have received all of us from Mozambique, from Angola, from Namibia, from Southern Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, quite a number of young people who were fleeing their respective countries because of oppression, lack of freedom and everything, to make our way to Dar es Salaam. It is where we all came together. And then, of course, we applied to go to school locally in the Dar es Salaam. Eventually, some of us left from there. I was then assigned to come to the UK in 1968. It has been a long journey, a journey of life, but it shaped our lives as well. We're no longer what we used to be. I mean, interacted with people who opened themselves to us, provided comfort, solidarity, support. That is the level of support that helped us to make sure that we succeeded in our determination to add value to the liberation struggle that brought about a change, a fundamental change eventually to the whole of Southern Africa.
And just to develop that point, was that also true of your London years, because you were subsequently based in London for many years?
I came to London in 1968, having been sent by the leadership of SWAPO, which is the governing party today in Namibia, as a response to a number of people who were rounded up in Namibia, and they were facing a major trial in Pretoria. Most of them was sentenced to life, to long imprisonment on Robben Island. So my mission to London was to basically mobilize political support, mobilize with the international agencies that supported the defense of these people who were facing major trial in South Africa. And eventually, we built up a network of support, solidarity, working with political parties, church groups, youth organization, trade union organization, to build a massive political support for the cause of freedom.
And when the time came then, when Namibia had her independence, what role did the university play in particular?
When we went back to Namibia, finally, with the United Nations and the rest of the world pushed the South African regime to a point where we said, we can no longer accept the status quo and the regime that you are managing in the country. The time came and they gave up and allowed the United Nations to organize free and fair elections in the country. 1989, November, those elections produced the Constituent Assembly, of which I was a member from the very beginning. I was also a member of the drafting committee of the Constitution for Independent Namibia. It was something that has to be done within a time frame. From November to February, we had to produce the Constitution. I don't want to bore you with the details of what went on then, but after we finished the writing of the Constitution, I remember one of the issues that we wanted a Constitution of Independent Namibia to be a living document that speaks to the aspirations of our people. that guarantees the freedom of movement, and that basically should stand out as something important in the life of the country, help to unify the country after a long period of suffering and division and imprisonment. And one of the things we wanted to do was also, during the colonial period, many people were hanged for having committed political crimes, etc., etc. And we decided the capital punishment should be done away with. And as we were writing, I remember one of the members said, "But where do we derive the mandate for doing something so fundamental?" And we looked at each other and we said, "Well, yes, you're right. The 1989 election November had nothing to do with an issue of this magnitude. And therefore, where do we go? Where do we derive this authority?" So we call all the leaders of the various churches in Namibia to say, "Bishop, church leaders, help us. What do we do?" And they said, "Give us a day or two or three, we'll come back." They came back and told us, the whole committee said, "Have courage. Go ahead, do it." That's how the capital punishment finds itself in the Constitution of independent Namibia.
And we spoke yesterday a little bit about the importance of that constitution. So the idea that even today there are significant struggles over constitutional provisions.
Absolutely.
Could you say a little bit about the constitution today?
The constitution was written by the drafting committee, presided over by the current president, then the new Prime Minister of independent Namibia. One of the things I'm extremely proud of is the fact that it was written in such a way there were no voting. It was by consensus. Mm-hmm. Every line, every paragraph must be agreed upon. We must own that constitution unanimously, and it is very strong on the question of environment, mm-hmm. the question of climate change. Today we talk about, climate change has become such a dominant feature in the political discourse. But at that time when we were writing the core constitution, we were influenced by the Namibia's, as a country, it's surrounded by two major deserts. Our ecosystem is very, very, right. fragile, mm-hmm. and therefore we needed to put a strong emphasis on the question of environment and preserving the environment. And I think we did that in a very good time. Today, this is a subject that is enjoying a particular attention.
Very interesting. Very interesting, because it was so early on to be recognising those issues.
Yeah.
The Constitution of Kenya in 2010 has a land and environment chapter, and I often think that the land side of that receives much more attention than perhaps the environmental provisions do. And it's a very interesting suggestion.
Yeah.
I would like to go back very much and look actually at the provisions of the Namibian Constitution.
Yeah, you did talk about the role of the university. I didn't stay long in Parliament. Soon after that, the new president of independent Namibia took me out of Parliament and said, "Peter, I want you to go and set up a national university." Mm-hmm. So my mandate was very clear. We set up a new national university, basically doing away with all the various structures of tertiary level education and set up one national university that basically address the development, the skills and development for an independent Namibia. And through that experience, I learned the fact that we needed to have a university with international repute that will also connect with sister academic institutions, particularly in this country and elsewhere, using our particular experience of making sure that English was not, it was the official language now, but it is a language that we needed to be able to work towards improving, develop particular strategies that will help us to help upgrade the skills and competence of young people whose level of English was not adequate at the university level. I use a bit of my experience. I spent a year at a university in Finland, and during my stay there, I was interested in the fact that most of the Finnish students learn not less than 3 languages. And I was interested in the fact that they did that because Finland was a small country in the Nordic part of the world. And they were saying, for us to be able to communicate with the rest of the world, we needed to have at least 2 or 3 languages to have that kind of ability to be able to network with the rest of the world. So we put up a language center, very much based on the Finnish experience, and it helped us a lot. I remember helping a couple of young people who did very, very well in science subject, but who were totally inadequate with English. So we took them and gave them a year to upgrade their skills and competence in English language. And it worked extremely well. And these are some of the examples we did, because we had a university that was basically committed to nation building.
Precisely that. And you took the lessons from Dar es Salaam
Absolutely.
and from Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana,
where
the university was so central to the notion of nation building.
Absolutely. And there was a lot of interesting issues about. We link up with most universities. We became very active within the Association of Commonwealth Universities, Association of African Universities, of which we are active member. Through this kind of network, we're able to benchmark, learn from the experience of other academic institutions. And basically, the critical thing was to connect Namibia with the rest of the world. Having been a forgotten little province of South Africa, we say, as an independent nation now, we need to link up with the rest of the world, because we belong there.
And I saw that at first hand, Honourable Speaker, when I was recently in Windhoek at the Association of African Universities Vice-Chancellors Conference, at which you received a recognition award. And that conference brought such credit on the University of Namibia and on Namibia as a country, because it brought together in one place all of the leaders of higher education across the entire continent.
I was sitting there now in my capacity as a speaker, but as a man who presided over that university for more than 10 years. It made me feel extremely proud. And it is very important, we were also a partner of the government. We had senior officials within our government, leaders who didn't have academic kind of background. So I went to the World Bank and I organized a special fund that we used to help retrain some of the senior officials all the way to the level of the deputy minister level. We organized this particular program. It used to run after office hours from 5 to 7 every day from Monday to Friday. And through that, we're able to train and retrain senior government officials, including their deputy ministers. It's something basically we needed to have a government that is accountable, that is transparent and able to respond to the challenges of our time.
And we're here together partly because the University of Namibia has recently signed a civic partnership agreement with Cardiff. And I wonder if you could reflect briefly just on what that partnership means to you and what sort of work you would like to see us do under the auspices of that partnership, because that is a partnership that I'll be taking forward in my Cardiff role.
Well, remember the partnership was born out of our common experience, our desire to identify concrete programs that we can run in partnership that will assist us to train as many our own staff. Mm-hmm. We need to build capacity in a particular sectors, particular area. And the Cardiff UNAM partnership actually have done extremely well. It's one of the initiatives, one of the programs that have survived. And we've been able to sustain that because the way it was structured, it was linked to particular needs and helped us to address those particular aspects in a very practical way. And what we need to do now is to review what we have done, reposition the partnership between the two universities, particularly looking at some of the new developments. Mm-hmm. We are talking about green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is going to require particular specialized skills. Mm-hmm. And we don't want, we talk about Namibia has been very lucky to have resources, natural resources. And you talk about value addition. With the value addition we talk about, we need to be able to concretely identify things that need to be done locally. We are not going to be able to do that on our own, mm-hmm. but through the partnership and the network that we have, the University of Cardiff can be could become a strategic partner mm-hmm. in all other related aspects that we could identify. And we don't need to come to the UK and start looking for other institutions to do this. You'll be able to determine. Mm-hmm. If you don't have the particular skill that we need in the partnership, you'll be able to know, either you go to Edinburgh or to London or to Manchester, mm-hmm. to be able to secure that particular aspect that will then reinforce the partnership. So it really is a question of becoming much more strategic mm-hmm. in terms of what is needed here. Now, Namibia might be regarded as a small country in terms of the number of people, but Namibia could become a strategic hub for Southern Africa mm-hmm. because of our access to the Atlantic Ocean, given the fact that our neighbors are landlocked countries. They need to be able to use in terms of transportation and every aspect that is needed to have access to export, import. Namibia could play an important role. And we can use our partner, the University of Cardiff, to do a number of things that we have not been able to explore so far. But given the goodwill and the level of investment that's coming from the EU, we're talking about 8 billion euro being invested in the green hydrogen. Mm. And we have to work together to see how we can sort it out.
And on our part, the partnership is hugely important because it's an opportunity from Cardiff's side to learn a great deal from leaders in higher education on the continent. I was really struck by that when I was at the Vice Chancellor's Conference in Windhoek. And it's an opportunity for our colleagues based here in Cardiff to enjoy and to benefit from the kind of international mobility that you spoke about earlier on. Those opportunities are absolutely formative to an individual and to the way in which you plan your career, the way in which you envisage your scholarship and your research. So from our part at Cardiff, it's really very important to us to have the partnership with you on the strategic level that responds to the kinds of priorities and needs on both sides. But from our point of view specifically, the opportunity that it presents my colleagues here at Cardiff to spend time with you, to learn from you, to understand these rich histories that we've been discussing, that seems to be invaluable and absolutely key to the partnership that we've created.
I want to link to that partnership between Cardiff and UNAM. We're also talking about bringing the Parliament of Namibia, which I'm the Speaker, to the Wales Assembly to see. It's a question of linking all these institutions working together. We are currently looking at beefing up one of our standing committees to help build capacity for members of parliament in the area of renewable energy, green hydrogen, etc. So that when we are going to be looking at the framing the laws, legislations, etc., we have people who are already well introduced to some of these ideas. And there's not, I don't see anything wrong in actually extending that kind of partnership to Wales Assembly to be part of the NAIR network. I'm particularly interested in the fact that you have youth parliament here. The National Assembly in Namibia, we have what we call the Children's Parliament. It is an initiative that have gained such a widespread support in the country. Young people, the young man who is accompanying me here is actually a product of the Young People's Parliament. We have few of them who have now become members of parliament. They are well introduced to the whole culture of parliamentary life. When they speak, they sound more confident because they have been part of the system. And these are the sort of things that really augurs well for a healthy, democratic society when we are able to prepare our young people to inherit the legacy or what some of the things we have done well, etc., and continue to add value to some of that. So I really see the linkages between UNAM and the University of Cardiff being healthy, having an opportunity to serve our two countries well, and really to add a great value to some of the developmental goals that we envisage to promote.
I couldn't agree more, and it's I think very important that the partnership is a civic mission partnership. So it entails close partnership between two academic institutions, but beyond that, we must make sure that we do the sort of work precisely that you're describing to link the Senedd and the National Assembly in Namibia, and I think we have a responsibility to the young people to also be working at that level to ensure that they have the sorts of opportunities, because they themselves will be coming up through our universities as well. So it makes perfect sense to me that the strategic partnership that we've signed between our institutions should be deepened and broadened in precisely the ways that you're describing.
I'm currently serving as a Chancellor of the Namibia University of Science and Technology. So I'm also in the process of talking to the university in Swansea to look at some of the things that we can do with them as well. So Wales, it's an area that we are targeting.
Absolutely.
I like the size, the number of people here, and more analytical to the population of Namibia. So I really think the prospects for promoting a very productive and lively cooperation, it is in the best interest of our two countries. I'm also very much a believer of having exchange kind of program. Young people from here spending time in Namibia, learning some of the things that we're able to do and adding value to some of the initiatives that we're undertaking. And also having people from here coming to, for instance, to the National Assembly, helping us. We have introduced the concept of e-parliament. But the e-parliament, one of the areas that we want to improve upon is the whole question of digital aspects, ITC, and helping to strengthen the technology around the parliament. We have a system that is dysfunctional, doesn't always work well, and we are also in the process of helping members of parliament to acquire the necessary technology, the skills to know how to use technology to improve on the technology. the pandemic have actually taught us that we should prepare for any eventuality. When we are not able to meet all together in one hall, to have an institution that is equipped technologically to provide service, even if we are going to meet in different space and so forth. These are some of the things that we believe you can assist us to improve on.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. It's been a pleasure to speak with you this morning, to have you with us in Cardiff on the occasion of your Honorary Fellowship. Many congratulations, Hongera Sana, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.